Point, I have been teaching and doing this stuff for like over a decade at this point. And I went from teaching really big group classes, like over 100 at a time, to then being like, fuck that, there's no way that I can actually help the individual if I'm teaching that many people at the same time. And then I went in the complete opposite direction. I was only gonna work one-on-one. And then I was like, okay, well now I'm limiting the amount of people that I can actually help. So now I'm going back in the other direction. So a lot of this is just experimental only in the, but not experimental in what I'm doing with you guys physically. All of that's been tested and proven for a very long time. It's super informal. You guys can ask me questions. We can chat about stuff. We can be like, well, you're telling me to feel it in my hip, and I feel it not in my hip. What the hell is going on? All of that is my favorite thing. It's really more of like, I know you guys. We don't really know each other. And so what's helpful about doing that for the first time where we don't know each other is we can kind of use the relationship building dynamic between myself and you guys in the same way how we're going to build the dynamic of the relationship between yourself and your body. So if it's been a while since you've moved, or if you're dealing with an injury, it's one of those things where like, it's like we're in a relationship that we can't just be like, fuck you, see you later. Like, we have no choice. We got to stick this shit out because that's the only thing that we've got. And so a lot of the communication, the like thematic stuff will be about building a relationship and building communication tools. And then what's nice is that it applies to how this is all happening. So I want you to feel free to be completely honest. I want you to feel free to communicate with me whenever you want. And the biggest thing is that everything that I'm presenting tonight is just like a tool. But I've done this for so many times, everybody's reception of the tool is completely different. And so if it's not a tool that fits in your toolbox, throw that shit right in the garbage, right? It doesn't hurt my feelings, and in fact, it's really helpful because it's like, well, that tool didn't work for you. Cool, that gives me good data of how to go in a different direction so that we can find the tool that actually fits in your toolbox. Fair? Does that make sense? Does that sound good? Okay, cool. Have we all chatted and said what's up and know each other and things? Okay, great. Okay, perfect. So everybody sent a fantastic email with the stuff that they were working on and wanting to focus on. Obviously, we're only limited in the sense that time structures, but if I don't cover something specific and you have questions for me later, that's my favorite thing to chat about, so we're gonna have stuff later, but I really wanna focus on, it seems to be like a kind of concurrent theme within this group in particular, that there is like lumbar, hippie, low body stuff, and we'll still have a conversation with upper body things, but the deep focus, which is why we have these balloons, and you're like, what? What's happening with these balloons? We're just gonna make, that's all that it is. I'm gonna blow up a big sign, and we're gonna heal it through joy. Yeah, exactly. It's gonna be mostly a focus on that. But as we go through, if you're like, I'm feeling, different data, and you're confused about that data, talk to me. Cool? Okay, great.
I also want to reiterate something.
Please.
So, again, Mark is just the nicest, kindest human.
Shut the fuck up.
Everything he does, it's a very personal and intimate experience with your body. So, just don't be afraid to communicate if there's confusion. Because it's a very personal experience. It's not like a dance class where you can see it and you're like, oh, I'm doing it right because it's a squat and I look like everyone else. It's very personal, and you might be doing it, but you might not feel something, or you might really be feeling something. And the beauty of this atmosphere that we want to create is for you to literally raise your hand in real time and be like, something's happening and I'm not sure and I want to talk about it.
Yep.
It's the best. And it makes the experience that much better. So really take advantage of how casual and intimate this is to be able to like respond to your body.
Yeah. You're amazing. Thank you. That's really helpful. And also the fact that we were chatting, and so I want to reiterate the point that we were chatting about, which is like, in these group class settings and just other, like I was at a wedding last night, there's a lot of other things where everyone feels like we're kind of coming out of this COVID shell, and it's like, community again, that's right, you're a real person, not just like a screen situation, all those types of things. And so my hope is that we're building a longer term relationship on stuff, and my go-tos have just been straightforward honesty and communication, and lots of communication. You can't over-communicate with me, I absolutely promise. Cool? So we'll think about this as something that we're building over a long period of time so that you can sift through toolbox and tools so that you're like, wow, after a while of having played these games, I got a pretty good toolbox. Things seem to be working for me. Cool? Okay, sweet. Nice, excellent. Young man, how are we doing?
We're live, baby.
Oh, sweet. Okay, good. Do you need me to do anything with this guy?
No, it's okay.
I'm not recording. Is that okay?
Oh, we're monitoring it.
All right, well, then I'll just do it right here. I'll just record it on here. All right, cool. Oh my heavens. Do you have a new puppy? What?
We're like,
what's his name? From Avatar? It's so cute. Oh my god.
Crazy parents. We don't leave him home very often, and it's great. Like he's, I don't know, he's being a good boy.
But I'm glad that you have that. I think
gives me less anxiety to like leave him.
Well, but so one of the things that I talk about a lot with my clients is like if head and heart stuff is not, it's a little bit like let's say you and I are actually going to get to know each other and chat about stuff. If I have like a lot on my mind and I'm feeling very emotional and my phone is out and it's blowing up, I'm gonna have a really hard time having a conversation with you, right? So I like that you have something where you can check and just have the reassurance and do all of those things.
Yeah.
And like we don't have to do it in this specific space, but just know that if there are things heavy in your heart and your mind, and as we're building a relationship, you can like share that shit with me. That's what I ask. Like I have to do that with my clients, otherwise it feels like we're talking around stuff and we can't get through to the specific thing. So I genuinely mean that, but it's not also like the communication is not forced. It's as much or as little as you guys feel cool with.
Yeah.
Cool? All right, dig it. So let's do this. It's kind of like a rainy day, and I want it to feel a little cozy. We've got a heater. It's going to start warming up a little bit. Let's go ahead and start lying on our backs. And so I want you to find something that feels actually comfortable. So that can be flat. That can be big floppy starfish. That can be hand to heart, hand to belly. That can be legs in any position. That can be anything that feels like, okay, cool, I'm chill, I'm relaxed. Eyes open or eyes closed is up to you, whatever makes you feel the safest. Yeah, and let's do a little breath together. So nice, big, slow, full inhale. Don't worry about how you're breathing. And then nice, slow exhale. Good, and then just to kind of keep with our thematic discussion in terms of like the relationship building idea, depending on where your headspace is at or where your attention is at, we don't need to fight anything, we don't need to force anything. So if you feel very distracted by something or there's something that is taking up some of the attention from earlier in the day or something coming up or any of that stuff, that's okay. That's totally okay. Instead, we're just going to give the attention stuff to do, and you'll do that by taking in the sounds of the space, my voice, the music, breath around you, your own breath. You can take in the physical sensation, right? What does it feel like just to be lying down? The physical contact of body to ground. You can feel the temperature of the air. There's almost an infinitude of data points that you can put your attention on, and the attention likes to do stuff, likes to have things to focus on. And then the last one, because the breath is going to be a big part of the game that we play tonight, is just start noticing, how do I breathe, right? One of the most hilarious things about being a human is that this very, very vital, important thing that we are mostly unconscious of, the moment I say be aware of breath, you're like, oh shit, I'm in charge now, right? I got to figure out how to do this thing. So what I want you to try and do is, even though I'm saying put attention on it, try to just see how your body would do it if you weren't intentionally trying to do stuff with it. Right? I know that's a little vague, but I want you to just see, like, okay, when I'm inhaling, where does the air seem to want to go? When I exhale, do I feel musculature doing that? Or am I just kind of like letting gravity be the doer? All of it's fine. There's no like good or bad. There just is an isness, like what is happening, and that's it. Good, and then I want you to start seeing if you have some choices in this game. You're like, okay, so my natural tendency seems to be breathing in here, or exhaling here, whatever it might be. But if I wanted to breathe deeper into my belly, can I? If I wanted to breathe deeper into my chest, can I? If I wanted to put more air into, let's say, the left side of my rib cage, could I? If I wanted to do it on the right side of my rib cage, could I? And again, there's not like a, I can't, shit! It's just more like a, okay, cool, no big deal, right? Whatever the data is, that is what the data is. All right, cool. So this kind of mental headspace of being a little scientist, of kind of reestablishing the relationship, kind of like we're meeting our body or meeting the sensation for the first time, is how we're going to navigate our time together. When you're ready, I want you to just gently start finding some movement in your eyeballs, and that's going to seem super weird. So one of the first acronyms that I'm going to introduce you all to is something called a controlled articular rotation, but we're just going to abbreviate it to CAR. And we're going to start with the eyeballs. And so you can keep your eyes closed for this part because we'll all look a little bit funky. I'll be doing it too. I don't mind looking funky. I want you to look to your left, but don't move your head or your jaw or anything else, and then look to your right. And so do that a couple of times, left and right. And scan your body for tension. If the jaw is trying to tense or your face is trying to tense, just tell everybody else to chill out and just feel the ocular tissue, the ocular muscles, looking left and looking right. And then once that feels pretty good, you can start moving it into the full rotation, like a great big slow sweeping circle, and you'll trace the outline of your eye sockets in one direction, and then you'll do it in the other direction. And I want you to gently really feel like, oh damn, I got some eyeball muscles in there, right? It might feel like there's a little bit of a stretch, or it might feel like there's the sensation of work. Totally cool. Make sure that feels relatively balanced in terms of like a directionality one way and a directionality the other way. And then once that feels pretty good, you can relax the eyes, let them come to center, and we'll find a little bit of movement in your fingers, and a little bit of movement in your toes, a little bit of movement in your jaw. And then let's continue the kind of like nice feeling stuff for the body. I want you to bring your fingers to your actual jaw tissue and just give it a little massage. Notice the differences between right side structure or left side structure, and then that massage can kind of move up into your temples or your ears or anything that just feels good. It's a little bit like if I were to have a conversation with somebody for the first time, we don't just like dive straight into, what do you think happens when we die? It's really more of like how was your day? How was the weather today? So we're just kind of easing into the nice stuff. Okay. Once that feels pretty good, let's go ahead and find a nice big full body stretch like you're waking up first thing in the morning. Reach your hands back towards my wall, your toes towards the mirror. Actively pull yourself in half. Great big full breath in. And as you exhale, let's bring the knees into the chest. Give yourself a nice big hug. And then let's gently think about finding a little massage of your low back and sacrum into the floor. Anything that feels good. That can be side to side. That can be up or down. That can be a little circle. And when that conversation feels pretty full and complete, place your feet down on the ground so that they're planted. So knees bent, feet flat. Cool. First little bit of discussion, joint-wise, is going to be with our lumbar. So I want you to keep your butt on the ground, but we'll just gently find some little baby cat and cows. So you guys are movers and you know what this is, but just to reiterate so we're all on the same page, I want you to think about your pelvis like it's a bowl of cereal. Okay, pick your favorite cereal. And when you find cow, it's like you're spilling the cereal away from your face, right? I could get my hand underneath your lumbar technically. And then when you go into cat, it's like you're spilling the cereal bowl into your face. There's no way I could get my hand underneath you because you're gently pressing the lumbar and the sacrum into the floor. Just a couple of those, just kind of establishing again that like baseline communication and sensation, just to see what's going on through there. Okay, for 3, 2. Excellent. Once that feels pretty solid, we're going to go into our first bit of like effort, but I want you to go very slowly and gradually. Working with dancers for a long time and athletes in particular, y'all like to go 0 to 100, and so we're going to start at like 0.01%, okay? So float your legs like you're in an upside down tabletop position so that your shins are parallel. Cool. Now if this sucks, give me a heads up and I'll give you a different modification, okay? Hands go to your thighs, so pretty much just right underneath the knee. The game here is you have to keep breathing, and you're gently going to keep a little bit of the cat belly that we just established, and then it's up to you to determine the intensity by gently pushing your hands into your legs, but it's the big tissue of your core that resists that push. Now, if we go max effort, we'll be able to sustain this for like 3 seconds. So I need you to find something where you're like, okay, yeah, I feel effort, I feel work in my belly, but I'm able to find nice, big, slow, full inhales. It's like I can fill my entire rib cage with air, even though there's a little tremble, tremble, shake happening in that low body system. Now, at any point if you needed a break, take the break. Otherwise, if I had my druthers, which is the weirdest phrase, I don't actually know what it means, but if I had my ideas here, I want you to try and feel the six-pack muscles. I want you to try and feel your deep low belly muscles. And then there's one particular muscle group we're going to focus on. It's technically through the oblique, but it's a little bit deeper. So it's going to feel like the deepest layer of core that you can possibly humanly find. And we're going to get more data on that in a second. But just kind of connect with as many points of your core that you possibly can. Ramp it to a spot where it starts to feel like the oven is definitely preheated. Let's do this for 3, for 2. Gentle, gentle, you may relax and bring that down. And if it feels good to find a stretch or a little cat-cow or any of that stuff, that makes sense. Did we feel that? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, fantastic. Okay, cool. Bring the feet back to that kind of planted space and then float just the right leg, but the left leg can do whatever. It can be straight or it can be bent. Yes, exactly. So we've got right knee pretty much directly on top of the right hip socket. Go ahead and hold your actual pelvis with your hands. I want you to feel like the pointy parts of your bones. Just don't let the cereal bowl move, right? The entire pelvis just stays where it is. We're gonna just internally and externally rotate the femur in the socket. So it's like your ankle's gonna go out to the side towards your face. If we imagine the femur, we can all kind of take a look at Haley actually, if you're confused. It's like this femur is just a corkscrew, and then we're going to clockwise it and counterclockwise it, okay? So the first big game that I want us to notice here is if we get any help from the rest of the surrounding tissue or joints. The most likely suspect is the lumbar or the oblique or the low back tissue or belly tissue in general. And ideally, you're like, hey man, I'm just trying to have a conversation with the hip. Everybody be quiet for a second, okay? And if you're like, that's not a lot of movement, that's okay. Totally okay. The ideal outcome here is if we think about the femur being one big solid bone, that means that when we're rotating it, it's working at the deepest layer of connection inside that hip socket. So if I had an outcome that would be ideal, you're feeling pretty deep layers of communication in that hip socket. But if you're like, Mark, I don't feel it, I feel it in my hip flexor or my inner hip, whatever, that's okay, totally okay. Once you're like, yeah, I got a pretty good idea of what that is, then you can gently bring that foot down and you'll switch to the other side. Okay, no rush in the slightest. And then the nice thing about the right side, left side kind of differential here is that now your brain has an understanding of what the heck we're asking it to do. Okay? Even if that means that there's pretty massive discrepancies between the right side and left side, that's not a big deal. It's totally okay. All right? Just see if you can kind of feel that same femur rotation and then take in the data of like, all right, do I have helpers on this side? Do I feel the sensation differently than what I was experiencing on the other side? And it's the same exact headspace that we established in the beginning. It's not like an evaluative good or bad. It just is an is thing or an is not thing, and that's fine, totally cool. Good, no rush here. Second side always tends to move a little bit faster because the brain knows what's up, so once you come up to a seat, and then I'm going to teach back here and look at y'all in the mirror. So if that's weird, you guys can either chat with me in the mirror or teach you guys because that's what matters the most here. All right, so the scap car can be a little deceptive in terms of the conversation that's happening, so I want to break it into some smaller components. So yes, it's a circle, but I also want to think about like north, south, and east and west, okay? So for this next one, if you have to take a break at any point, please take a break, but I want you to pull your scaps as high your ears as you possibly can. Essentially, if you're looking at yourself in the mirror, I want you to have no neck. So you're in the ceiling, all the way up in the attic. Stay up in the attic, but now bring the shoulder blades together, but stay up in the attic. Yep, exactly. And then come forward, but stay up in the attic. Okay? Go through that a couple of times, and if you feel crampy or you need to take breaks or any of that stuff, please do.
Oh my God.
And then relax. Perfect. We'll do the exact same thing, but just in the opposite direction. So now you're going to drive it down. You're going to depress the scaps into the basement. Stay in the basement, and it's nice to have the mirror because now when you go retraction, which is blades together, and protraction, which is blades apart, do the scaps want to kind of come up into the ground floor or up into the first floor? Like, nah, we're staying in the basement. Okay, take your time. Beautiful. And so now we'll continue this idea with retraction and protraction. You can shake that out for a second. You'll live in the middle ground, and now you'll just do retraction, which is if my finger was right in between your shoulder blades, try and pinch my finger. So just start with that. You're pinching my imaginary finger between the shoulder blades. And maybe you even actually literally feel them connecting. Fine. Stay connected. Keep them connected. How high can they go staying connected? How low can they go staying connected? Take your time, play with that game a couple of times. And then we already know the last game. When you're ready for the last game, it's protraction, which is essentially, if we think about elevator doors closed is retraction, elevator doors fully open is protraction. Stay protracted, and how protracted can you stay as we go up and down? Better? Worse? Oh, you sexy man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Okay, cool. All right, so then when you return to the scapula car, when you return to that initial game, think about how much effort there was as you went through, and try and capture that range of motion as you go through the full scap car. So go ahead and try that out again. And it'll probably feel very similar, but what we're trying to do, especially with the car, it's like if Haley and I want to have our own conversation, and Brandon's like, hey, Mark, hey, Mark. I'm like, Brandon, I love you, my man. Yeah, exactly. So the car is a way for us to have this like very intimate one-on-one connection with each particular joint. Okay. Nice. Okay, good. Relatively warmed up. We feel surprisingly toasty from just moving our scaps in a circle. Okay, fantastic. This next one I'm actually going to demo up here for a sec. Sorry, Brandon. I want us to come into tabletop because I want us to warm up a little bit more upper body stuff. Yeah, if at any point you need to like change or it's too hot in here, I can kill that thing too. So essentially the spine discussion, it's obviously the thing that connects upper body to lower body. So we're going to spend a lot of time on that stuff, really work on the low, and then we are going to spend some time hitting some of the upper body stuff, okay? Just in case you're like, I'm not hitting other things that I want to hit. So if we're thinking about like traditional cat and cow, right? It's a C shape and then a C shape. But in how we've seen like this intimate conversation with the eyeballs and the intimate conversation with just the scaps, the vertebrae, each individual component has their own little conversation that we have to have with, as opposed to it just being about a shape and about a shape. So when we're going through our cat-cows, it's going to be as much as we can articulate one at a time that you possibly can, and then you can obviously like the originations that your body tells you of like, hey, please God, put your hands here, listen to it, right? Your body's incredibly smart, and then you will try and articulate one piece at a time, moving in the opposite direction, okay? And then I'll give you a tool to make this a little bit easier in a second, but I want you to just kind of play with it by yourself solo for a bit, okay? So no rush. And so I guess the metaphor for this one would be like, you're at a party with your bestest friends and you have to try and connect with all of them, okay? And then the easiest way to do that is to be like, how are you? Okay, good, excellent. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next one. How are you? Okay, good, excellent. Now, odds are there will be pockets where you have lots of conversation and lots of communication, and that's great, totally wonderful. Go ahead and have those conversations. But the areas where you're like, God damn, do I have a spine here in this one pocket? That's where we tend to have the most to gain. So the tool that I'm going to introduce, and you guys can keep going as I talk about it, is something called Pales and Rails, and we'll probably talk a little bit more in depth about it later. It just stands for progressive and regressive angle isometric loading. But in this position, all that it means is that you're going to gently squeeze your hands and knees towards each other, or gently push your hands and knees away from each other during your articulation. Okay, so you'll start to notice as you engage a little bit more force generation by that squeeze or by that push, the sense of communication will heighten a little bit. The sensation will start to spike in different areas. So especially if you're coming across areas that feel kind of blank, try that Pales Rails game, try that little engagement, and see if that helps you heighten the conversation of that particular pocket you're trying to focus in on. Does this make sense? Yes. Okay, cool. Is there any confusion, or are there any areas where you're like, God damn, I don't think I know how to communicate with my thoracic spine?
Are you saying that like you're at a sticky point where you're like, I can't really feel the communication? Try both pails and rails?
Correct. Yes.
See which one turns on the light?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's a fantastic question. I'd also say that getting good at starting from your head in one direction and from your hip in the other direction, and getting good at both will be massively beneficial as well.
I have also noticed.
Please.
When I'm here,
yeah.
initiating, like starting to move the opposite direction.
Yep.
I think I've always been starting to move my pelvis as my head goes down.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be the neck first.
Ideal.
Right?
Well, but it's really, again, it's not like a good or a bad. It's just one of those things where if you didn't ask your body to do that, why the fuck are you doing that, body? You know what I mean? And so if you have the choice and you can do it and it's easily switchable, then it's no problem.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. Of course.
It really is crazy how I feel like barely. It's like,
Yep.
It's hard to. It's like a hard, just like line. And
okay, fantastic. Does that seem to be the case for everybody here? Okay, so then let's do a thoracic conversation, and then we'll dive into our low body hip stuff. Brandon, I'm fucking you up again. I'm sorry. Oh, but look at you smart little fish. Okay, great. Okay, perfect. So it's weird. I know I'm facing away from you, but I want to mirror you so you can kind of see the game that I want us to play. So when it comes to if I gave you one thing to take away from the class in terms of the most important thing, the flexion and extension of the individual vertebrae pockets, it's the biggest problem that I see within humans just in general because everyone is this chair-shaped creature, right? However, sometimes it needs a little it's like we have to, whenever I was in trouble, my mom would put me in the car and I'd sit in the passenger seat and we'd drive in the dark. And it was like the fact that we weren't looking at each other. It was easier for us to have the conversation, the difficult conversation, as we drove through the same thing. So sometimes we have to kind of have this side conversation with the body, and then it's like, oh, I'm understanding what you're saying. I'm sorry, I wasn't doing that before. Okay? So the full thoracic car involves rotation with flexion and extension. So here's a variation that I like. Just a gentle bear hug. You can do a lot of bear hug or just something that feels relatively chill. Seated is nice because then your booty can't really shift or move. So just try and think about left butt and right butt cemented into the ground. We'll start with rotation to the right. You'll hold that. You can find a couple of nice deep breaths. And then you'll go into cat. So you'll round in rotation. So you're rounding and you're rotating and you're rounding and you're rotating, you're rounding and you're rotating. Stay in cat, and now let's rotate to the left. You're in as much cat as you can find. You're still catting, you're still rotating, you're still catting, you're still rotating, you're still breathing. And we're in as much rotation as possible, but now come up through cow. And it's not your elbows. I don't care where your elbows are going. It's really more where your sternum is going. So we're cowing, we're twisting, we're cowing, we're twisting, we're cowing, we're twisting, we're cowing, we're twisting. And now you're going to stay in cow, and now we're going to twist across in cow. Okay, and now that is basically the full rotation, but then you'll get good at doing that game in both directions. And everybody's body will be a little bit different. There'll be areas where you're like, God, this feels really tight or sensitive. I would recommend giving it a little extra TLC and giving it a little bit of breathing room and a little bit of, okay, this feels funky. How do I get better at this? Just by doing more of it. So you'll pass through it one way, pass through it the other way, pass through it one way, pass through it the other way. Yep, take your time.
It's so hard.
It seems crazy. Because from the outset, there's not a lot of movement, but the conversation is really, really intense. Yep. Okay, good. We can come back to this game in a second, but now we understand just a little bit of the body's a closed system, right? So from head to toe, the weirdest one I've had with my clients is I had a client who was had a trap neck thing, and I did all the normal things that you would expect for a trap neck thing, and it wasn't until we got to her feet and started really getting her feet and toes active that she was like, you know what's weird? This feels so much better. I was like, fuck. Like, of course, that's just how the game goes.
Yeah.
So that's like the global game of the thoracic, but now I want to give you one more very specific local game for the thoracic. So let's go ahead and lie down on our bellies. Let's do heads down here. And then this will be much less looking at me. It'll be really more what the conversation is like for you. So hands are there to help you. I don't care where they go, but hands are your friends, arms are your friends. Okay? Let's start first by having a conversation with your cervical spine, which is going to be your neck. So I want you to start bringing your chin forward towards the mirror and then up towards the ceiling. And I want you to just feel like, oh yeah, there are muscles in the back of my neck, right under the base of my skull, and I can feel that get nice and toasty, and then bring that down. And you'll do that a couple of times. And then if we think about sensation or work as paint, right now all the paint is pooling in that one area that you're feeling it in the back of your neck, right? I want you to start pulling the paint or the sensation into those deeper, high pockets of the thoracic spine. And how you're going to do that is a little bit of help from the hands. So you're going to take some of the weight out of your body, bring the chin closer to the mirror, bring the chin up towards the ceiling, and see, since we have an inroad with the cervical spine, can we start creeping that sensation down, down, down into more of the thoracic. Now, what will probably happen, because you guys are good movers, is that there will be another vertebra spot that's like, I'm the hero. And it's like, no, I wasn't talking to you. I'm trying to get that spot right underneath the cervical pocket. Does that make sense, or am I just talking in Japanese? Perfect. Gina, I'm going to demonstrate on you.
Okay, sure.
So I'm assuming that as you do this first part, you're feeling heat back here, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So since we have an inroad, we've got a communication pocket that lives through here. Your next goal would be to try and shift that work lower.
Mine goes immediately
Into your lumbar spine? Fantastic. So if we come down and we take a little break and you find a little breath, and this feels like it just won't turn off by itself. So first just see if you can do it and just be like, lumbar, my friend, not you. Okay, so just try that. Just bring your chin forward. And it's going to be really small. Think like that 0.01%. Okay, I feel a little bit, but is that less or is it about the same as before? Okay, perfect. So go ahead and relax for a second. That type of approach I'm a big fan of, because then we don't become dependent on some other tool. However, it's okay for us to become dependent on some other tool at first. So this is not the most comfy block in the world. In fact, you know what I might use is this towel.
Okay.
One of the games that you can play is squish it up and then put it underneath your belly, which will put your lumbar into a more rounded position. In fact, I lied. There's a way that we can do this. It's much easier. Will you guys come up into tabletop, but on your forearms? So knees and forearms. Cool. Now, because of this position, if you bring your knees and elbows a little closer together and then round your lumbar spine, keep the lumbar in that rounded position, and now do the exact same cervical conversation you were just having. So bring your chin towards me and try and start creeping that sensation into more of the thoracic pocket. And then it's gonna feel crazy. And then you can integrate a little bit of pails and rails. So think about squeezing your elbows or knees towards each other or pushing them away from each other, and we're trying to get more conversation into those high pockets of the thoracic rather than your poor neck just being like, what are you doing to me?
Oh my God.
Does that help?
Yes.
A little bit?
I'm shaking.
Gina, what do you think? It's okay if it doesn't.
I just feel stuck.
No,
Like,
but that
I get to a spot and I'm like, there's nowhere I'm going.
that is totally okay. So then I would say because if the lumbar is like, this is what I do, man. I do everything for you. I help out. Then I would for sure, Christian, I'm going to steal your block. Let's go ahead and have you try the variation I was talking about. It's going to be a little funky at first, but if you think about lying down. Okay, great. Not helpful?
Yeah, yes.
What do we think? Okay, great. So now that we've got a little bit more conversation in thoracic, go back into your regular segmentations and see if you're like, oh, you know what? Yeah, exactly. See, now I do have a little bit of conversation.
Want to switch to this?
Absolutely.
I think
the
it's a
lab's
lot.
just dying.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Oh yeah.
A little bit better?
Sorry, live stream.
What'd you say?
I said sorry to the live stream.
Oh, dude, that's the game.
Fuck 'em.
It's live. It's live, baby. Okay, cool. Excellent. Thank you all. Okay, cool. Better? Worse? Same? Different? A teensy bit better? It's also going to be one of those things where like, yeah, you guys have been moving this way for however many decades. When was the last time a man was like, I need you to really have a conversation with your neck and then, you know what I mean? Like, it's just going to take a little bit of time. But because you guys are good movers, this will happen in an instant, right? Anytime you think about doing cat-cows, you're actually thinking about doing these type of articulations. It's going to help tremendously, okay? Good. What do you think, Gina? A little bit better?
So much better.
Fantastic. Of course, of course. But look how lovely. I wouldn't have known if you hadn't communicated. So terrific. Okay, good. Perfect. All right, I want to go ahead and switch into our fun balloon game and some of our deeper core stuff, and then we'll move into some hip things. So go ahead and lie on your back for me for a second. Again, this game really will be about what the heck you're experiencing, not what your neighbor is or what even I'm talking about, okay? So go ahead and plant your feet for me. And then I want you to, we're all gonna be a little bit insane here for a second. I want you to poke yourself in your sides, like where you think your obliques are. And then go ahead, will you plant your feet for me just for the starting point? And then go ahead and give me, let's just do fake coughs together. So give me a little, good. Now do you feel how that tissue right underneath your finger, this is not a word, but it's the only word that I like to describe it. It like densifies, right? It goes from nothing and then it goes into like pretty solid, okay? Now, here's the ticket. Can you densify it and then during your next inhale, keep it as dense as it once was during the cough? Odds are you're like, shit, it's gone, and that's okay. And if you found it and then it's great, then that's totally great too. The other option I'm going to give you, and this is where we all are going to sound insane, we're all going to find some fake laughs together. And the reason for that is because the cough is very much 0 to 100. It goes nothing, ha, back down, right? The laugh is like, ha, 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 and the more genuine the laugh is, the more sustainable that tissue is, right? Yeah. Right? Does that make sense? Does that make sense a little bit? Right? Okay. So this is sometimes referred to as your ab wall, because we're going to get to the spot where it's so dense, you're like, God damn, if I push my fingers into this anymore, I'm going to like hurt my finger because that tissue is so solid and so strong, okay? So here's the first game that I want you to play. A, can you find the ab wall? B, can you densify the ab wall? Basically, you have full permission, this is the only time I'll ever say it, go 0 to 100. Go 0 to 1,000 on this ab wall. But then when you find an inhale, does it go away? And I want you to try and basically give me 1,000 on the ab wall and 1,000 on the inhale. And there's going to be a couple of things that happen. Your brain's going to be like, what the fuck is happening? And that's okay. The other thing, you might be like, wow, I feel weirdly exhausted. And then the third one might be like, oh yeah, the tissue that I'm contracting is tired. Okay? Okay, perfect. Take a little break. Give me some data. How's that going? Good? 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 Is it easy? Is it hard? Is it like what's our...
For me, it's hard, but it's also easy because I can find that. I like found that muscle immediately, and I'm able to hold it for a long time. But my breath is like, I feel like my inhale and exhale are very short.
Okay.
It's very like I don't have a lot of room.
Fantastic. Okay, great. Okay, perfect. So this is like the closest equivalency that I have found to like a strength training for your diaphragm, right? So if we think about the actual diaphragm, it's a muscle just like any other muscle. But I don't know if anyone's ever said the words, I'm going to have you strength train your diaphragm to you before. And so it's going to take a little bit of time for it to understand A, what we're asking it to do. But B, the game will be, can we get to a spot where the inhalations and the exhalations feel relatively calm, relatively smooth, even though obviously we're really densifying the hell out of this tissue, okay? That's where our balloons come into play. So go ahead and grab your balloon for me. Did I steal yours? Oh, tell me.
It's like you have to separate this from where the inhale happens.
Yep, absolutely. And so we'll start... No, that's fantastic. We're going to just start getting into some specifics of that game, but here I'm going to give you a little bit of the why behind why I'm doing this. So traditional, like, I hate that I'm going to say it, but I have to, core stuff this doesn't mean shit. Like doing sit-ups or doing crunches or any of that stuff, you're just targeting like that six-pack tissue and that's really it. Like planks are a little bit better, but this is essentially, one of the things that I focus on in particular is something called end range training. So the majority of training is it's mid-range. I'm doing a bicep curl, I'm taking it through the full range of motion. End range training is I'm taking the tissue in its longest position and then I'm saying, buddy boy, I need you to be strong as shit in this long position or super strong in the shortest position. So what we're doing right now with the ab wall is it's the smallest and tightest and densest it's ever been, and then we're asking it to get even tighter and denser and stronger in that position while also trying to find an inhale. So here's what the balloon's gonna do. So I'm gonna coach you through this one. I think it's helpful to have the spare hand poke yourself in the ab wall still, but the other hand's gonna hold the balloon in your mouth. Let's just start with this. And for those of you at home, if you're like, Mark, you didn't tell me you need to have a balloon, use a straw or something that you've got where you can just think about sending the air through a small thing, or you can just literally do your hand like this. Okay. So first of all, everybody here, just see if you can blow up the balloon. And if you're like, I can't, that's okay. Look at you, you're all dynamite breathers. Fantastic. Okay, good. When you were blowing up the balloon, did it feel like face pressure, or did it feel like you felt it pretty low? Pretty low? Yes. What do we think?
Yeah, lower abs. Yeah.
Lower abs? Okay, fantastic. Great. So here's how the breath cycle is going to go. We're going to do 3 to 4 rounds. That's what the balloon seems to be able to handle. When you exhale, you'll blow up the balloon. You'll keep the ab wall densified like crazy. Great, big, slow, luxurious inhale through your nose. And then you will repeat that cycle. So the balloon can handle about 3 to 4 good exhales. Go at your own pacing. Take your time. And if I had my druthers here, the ab wall is crazy dense. And the inhale, you get this little like tremble, I'm choking sensation at the peak because that is the diaphragm actively pushing and pulling air into the body. And so you might feel like your chest or your ribs or your back expanding during that inhalation. And I've got an absolute boatload of balloons, so if you accidentally pop it or you need a fresh one, let me know. Okay, cool. And then after we played that game for a bit, I'm just going to gather data, see how we're doing. Okay, cool. Good. Is this A, helping the brain to tissue communication of the ab wall? And the answer might be no. You might be like, I hate this goddamn balloon.
Absolutely.
Okay. Haley, we think? You're making it worse.
Yeah.
It feels like you're having a hard time finding it.
Well,
Terrific. Tell me.
I find it better without the balloon. Now my mind's on the balloon.
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
not logging.
Okay, perfect. So here's what I want you to do. Ditch the balloon for now.
Okay.
Okay, whatever was helping you find access to this point, that's the tool that's working for you.
Great.
Okay, try that out for now. I'm going to see how everybody else is doing. What do we think? Helping more, helping less?
More.
Yeah, Jalen, what do you think? What's the wibbly wobbly? Unsure?
So I'm breathing in through my
Nose.
nose and then blowing into the balloon.
Yep.
Am I holding this the whole time?
Yeah. So give me like the exhale, and then that stays crazy tight, and then inhale for me, and then it gets even tighter each time during the exhale. Yeah, yes, exactly. So each time that the ab wall should be denser than the last time you exhaled. Okay? Of course, thank you for telling me. So then here's the other ideal outcome as you guys continue to play this game. Balloon or not, whatever's going to help you find that oblique ab wall communication, that's what I want us to focus in on. Now here's the next part of the game. When you inhale, where does the air now go? If we're taking away that kind of like lower belly expansion or the rise and fall of belly because that tissue has to stay really tight, where's the inhale going for you? What's your thought? Yeah, test it out. There's no right or wrong answer. You'd be like, it's still in my belly, or maybe it's in my chest, or maybe, whatever.
Mine is going to my chest.
Okay. Yep, and does it feel like it is like stretching or expanding or creating space?
Yeah, it's like it's creating space, but
Okay.
my body's resisting it because it's like so.
Because it's hard to play that game.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
okay.
Like
I feel like I'm putting a lot of energy into like exhaling.
Yep.
But like almost like getting my head in now too. Like
Understood.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll probably take a little break here in a second because probably we've never done training with these balloons before ever.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I feel really relaxed.
Okay, well that's good. That's a pretty okay outcome. Where's the air going for you? I'm curious.
It's starting in my diaphragm, but I
Yep.
feel it like traveling up, and then my chest does feel like it's still expanding.
Opening through there. Okay, fantastic. Christian, thoughts? Similar?
And then like as it goes on and I keep breathing out,
Yeah.
let my chest expands to take in more air.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, good. So let's take a tiny. What were you gonna say, Jalen? Yeah.
I think whenever I'm feeling it in my upper, like in my chest,
Yep.
it's more of like I feel like my ribs are like
Trying to pop.
trying to raise.
Yes. Okay, cool.
Rather than like my chest really spinning,
Yes.
like they're trying to like and the
Yup.
back's trying to like you know.
Yup. I 100% know. Yep. Okay, good. Excellent. So let's take a teensy little break so we all don't pass out. Let's set the balloons to the side and then come up to a crisscross applesauce position for me. Okay. While I chat about this next little thing, go ahead and test out your SCAP cars again and tell me if that feels different, the same, better, worse than the first time you did it.
Much looser for me.
A little smoother. Fantastic. Cool. Good. And it's okay if you're like, no, it feels worse. Like, just whatever data is there is there, okay? So here's the game that I want us to get into eventually. If we're thinking about the game that I'm having us play with this balloon, if we think about like a soda can, when you first get the soda can, it's dense, right? It's really hard, and then you pop the top, and then you could crush it, okay? What has seemingly tend to happen within humanity, and I think it's because of our chairs or whatever it is, when we find breath, it's either what you were describing, Jalen, where it's this like beep boop, like your ribs are opening like a book and then closing, and that's how the air is coming in, or there's these little like micro shrugs that happen so that the entire chest lifts during the inhale and then falls during the inhale. Or, and this is, none of these are bad inherently, it's just like how we were chatting about before, if we don't have the option to, the body likes to have boatloads of options. If there's only one, and then all of a sudden that option is taken away, then the chances of injury skyrocket. So we want to have a gazillion choices available to us so that the chances of injury are mitigated. And then the last one is like what's taught in yoga, where it's just like this belly breathing through here. So what seemed to be the case for all of us for this last one was that we're starting to get more air up through the chest. Fantastic. If we think about the soda can metaphor, though, I want you to start having the option, the choice, to be able to breathe into any part, and we consider the Coke can from like collarbone to hip. So if we divide the body up, if I like cut myself in half and then I cut myself in half again, I have an upper right quadrant, I have an upper back quadrant, I've got a lower back quadrant, right quadrant, and then I've got a front lower quadrant. So we want to start being able to be like, basically anywhere you've got rib, there is lung that can and probably should be breathed into. And so what I see a lot with dancers in particular is like there's like a lot of like massive tension and tightness through the neck and through all the stuff through here. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but this particular game is one that seems to help a ton, is that now the body's got a lot more options for how do I get air in, as opposed to these micro, like thousands of micro adjustments to try and keep pulling air into the body, okay? So with that in mind, I want to have us do one more game, but we don't need the balloon. Okay, so let's go back down to our backs. One more breathing game, I mean. Cool. So the game that I want us to play here, the ab wall is still an important part of this game, so you'll still keep it there, but if it distracts from this next game I'm going to have us play, you can relax it a little bit. You can ease it a little bit. I want one hand right on your lowest rib. So your solar plexus is where your ribs come together. That's like a generally good spot for you to kind of feel. One hand's going to go there. And then if you just exhale naturally, those lower ribs fall. Right? We feel that?
Yeah.
Cool. So what happens now, the game that I want you to start playing, is as you exhale, the book, the low rib, will close. And that's going to become your new ceiling. So when you take your next inhale, don't let your hand rise any higher than that last exhale dictated that the bottom was. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. So now, since we all had a little bit of success breathing into our chest, I want to see if we can start having some success breathing into our back. So let's start with your, let's have left hand be the one that's resting on your low rib. Right hand, I want you to reach for the ceiling. Since we just had this discussion about scap cars, I want you to let the scap protract. So that's like the scaps are getting away from each other, and then because of that, you can get closer into the ceiling. So this is going to shrug this way. Yes, exactly. Good. Now go through the same exact breath exercise and see if we can start getting some air into that upper back right quadrant. Good, I'm gonna see if we've got a little more in there. Yes, yes, exactly. Like literally you're trying to touch me the entire time during the inhale, during the exhale. Yep. Touch me. That. Atta boy. See all that space through there? And now try and pump the inhale into that upper right back quadrant. And if you're trying it and you're like, it's not happening, it's okay. It's totally okay. Okay? Good, you're good. I'm just seeing if we've got a little more space through here. Yes. Yep.
It just feels like my neck is like.
Ooh. All right. Okay. You brought up another really fabulous thing that happens a ton, especially within my dancers. It feels like the front part of your neck wants to tighten up.
Yeah.
And the back.
And the back part? Okay, great. So then here's the game. It's going to be one of those very gentle approaches where instead of it being like, Mark said 1,000, I got to do 1,000. I want you to start seeing if you can get the entire communication process to be, it's similar to how we just adjusted for your low back. If we need to, I'll give it a block, like how we did before. But let's just see if we can diminish the, because like, if we think about the neck, look how silly and tiny it is compared to the other muscles that we have available to us. Try and be like, neck, not your job, my friend. Let's just see if we can use the diaphragm to pull the air in. And if we think about the breath mechanism in general, it's wild. Literally, it has to be strong enough to move bone, to push organs out of the way. Like there has to be so much oomph, force generation to make this happen. So again, whatever the data is, tell me what the data is. But the outcome that we're just moving in the direction of is that we start feeling that right back quadrant start to expand like how you guys were feeling your chest expand. And if that's not in the cards, again, totally okay. Maybe you start to feel just the right side. Maybe you feel the right chest. All of it's moving in that direction, which is good. And if you're like, oh, fuck it, I gotta take a break, you can try the left side for a bit and see how that goes.
I think he's giving it permission. The neck's like, you can chill.
Yeah, did that help? Okay, terrific, excellent. And then I am curious, what do we think? Is it going into the back a little bit or no?
I think on the left side for some reason.
Yeah, starting to really tighten up on that left side. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, and that is another really wonderful thing. As you test left side and right side, you might be like, I have access on this side. It immediately will help your brain understand what the hell we are asking it on the right side. So sometimes if you like kind of go back and forth a couple times, totally okay. Okay, cool. Data for me. Once you've got data, I would love to know what we're doing or what we're feeling, what we're experiencing. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, can I just interrupt?
No, everybody's going to chat.
I was initially like going quickly,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
everything would tense up.
Yeah.
If I like allowed myself to just naturally
Kind of be fluid, a little
just,
calmer.
Like, go slower.
Hell
my
yeah.
neck was able to
Not be as
relax.
much a part of the process.
Yeah, I mean it's still like sometimes a
Yep.
light pulse. Like,
Yep.
randomly, but I did feel the space.
Through that left side.
Yeah, through the and the
a little bit through the
like,
right.
the more that I reached upwards.
Yep.
So that was a new sensation.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Data.
I'm just more connected to my right side. For sure.
You feel like you've got more access through the right side?
Yeah.
Cool. And then are you feeling expansion on the right side?
Yes.
And then nothing on the left side?
A little bit.
Just quieter.
It's quieter.
Cool.
Yeah,
Totally
for sure.
okay. Similar, Jalen?
Yeah, on my right side, I'm feeling it expand, like breathing into the back portion.
Yep.
But yeah, on the left side, it's a little bit more strenuous to
Cool.
try and get it to that spot.
Yep. That's okay. Christian, very similar?
Yeah, very similar. Like,
Yeah?
definitely more information on the right side.
Cool.
In general.
Okay.
and the left. Like,
Okay,
take more
fantastic.
focus.
Yep, 100%. Thoughts?
I felt much more open on my left side.
Okay.
And I had this like realization that
Yeah.
almost every injury I've ever had has
Mm.
been on the right side of my body.
Mm.
And I was feeling like all of that when I was
Yeah.
trying to tune into the right. Like
Yep.
all these little pockets that are like
Yep, and trying to be like, don't do this. Don't
Yeah.
activate through here. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So the
All right.
left was like smooth.
Yep.
Yeah, no problems here.
Cool.
Right.
Okay, great. That makes a ton of sense. Let's go ahead and come up to a seat. So we're gonna put a pin in the breath stuff because it's a big, huge open world. But there's a couple of reasons why it's massively important. One, we've already kind of touched on in terms of like if you're dealing with, so I first came across this stuff because I was dealing with a weird hip flexor thing. Couldn't solve it, couldn't figure it out. And it was, when I first did any of this, I had no idea how to even activate it. Like I had to majorly cheat and find ways to get that tissue to even contract. The moment my body started to understand how to do this thing, hip flexor thing went away. So I've had a lot of success with doing hip stuff, but also upper body tightness, trap, neck, even the rotator guff game that we were playing before. Massively helpful and beneficial because we look at just the human body, there's a massive amount of just stuff through here. So if we can create more workspace, and we can create more options through all of this stuff, it makes everybody else's job, hip, shoulder, and all those things, a lot easier. Okay, so that's the first bit. As an outcome that is possible, because I've done it a lot with a lot of clients, we'll get to a point where even just sitting through here, like I even play the game right now, when I find a nice big inhale, I can choose intentionally whether I'm breathing into my upper part of my back, on the left side, or the right side, or the front side. Okay, so you'll get to that spot because you all are very good movers, and especially like now that we've got an inroad on one side versus the other side, just the fact that your brain has that one side to be like, oh, the other side will catch up, I promise. Cool? Okay, good. Let's take a little break from that. We're gonna go a little bit over. Are you okay with that? I don't give a shit. All right, fair enough. Let's have a conversation about hips, okay? So we're gonna set up in something called 90-90, and so let's do y'all's left leg in front. 90-90, if I was looking at you from a bird's eye view, 90-ish in the knee, 90-ish in the hip, and then on both sides, okay? Go ahead and come down to your left forearm. And here's the first little bit. Stack top hip directly on top of bottom hip. Gently keep that front knee down. And all we're gonna see is if we've got control of the external rotation of the femur inside that hip socket.
Barely.
Yep, that's okay. And if you're trying and nothing's happening, then I want you to lie down like a little baby. You can lie down on your hands or you can lie down on a block. Go ahead and try that. And now lift.
Oh yeah.
And that'll give you a little extra. And then think about what we did in the very beginning of our session where I had you lie on your back and you were just doing that rotational game. Try and feel this as deep in the hip socket as you possibly can. Yep. And you'll be like, why is this so challenging? And that's okay. But now that you kind of have a little bit of an inroad, odds are if you come back to your forearm, you'll have a little extra than you did before. Okay, so try that first. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's go ahead and stay here. Back leg for internal rotation. Go ahead and touch your pelvis. Try not to let your pelvis wibble wobble during this. You're just going to lift that back ankle and then come down. Okay, do that a couple of times. Rotational control, active range of motion is the biggest gap that I tend to see in hips these days. Okay? Perfect. So everyone's internal looks pretty sweet to me. Let's have a conversation about that external. So I like this forearm position that we are in. Let's go ahead and use blocks since we all have blocks. Block, 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 block. If you don't have a block, I'm going to give one to you. Block, 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 block. Okay, great. Yep, cool. Go ahead and stack the block underneath your ankle. So the pails rails game that we had in our cat cows, this is where we're going to utilize that game again. So just so everyone's on the same page with it. Pails, if I'm finding a stretch tissue in my neck, pails is the progressive angle, it's the open angle. Rails is the regressive angle, it's the closed angle, it's the smaller angle. So in this position, if I actively am trying to find a stretch in my external rotation, you might have to be like my hips are stupidly externally rotated, like they're very open. But do you guys feel like a little stretch? And you might have to stack the block a little higher. Let's try that. Ish. So the progressive tissue is going to be this, it's going to be deep in there, but it'll be kind of like the tissue that you're feeling stretch in the furthest part of your external rotation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Pails will be, I'm going to try and rotate down into the block. Don't lift the knee, keep it down. Actively try and crush the block by rotating the femur harder into that block. Yep, take your time, breathe. Rails will be try and lift off the block. And it may not happen, and that is okay. It's not a goal-oriented outcome. Yep. It's really more the work that's building up to the task that matters. So go through that Pales Rails a couple of times. And then this is one where you have permission to get up to 100, but you have to do it by building to 10, 20, 30. Like I want you to be able to intentionally hit each level of that force generation, okay? And then breathe.
I can't keep this out of my neck.
Oh, you're feeling a lot of tension through here? So what I've actually found to help is do the other hand down and then support your head.
Okay.
Or if you need this block, go for it. I'm not using it. Yep. Cool. Does this concept make sense?
Yes.
Ish?
Yes.
Cool. Good. Now, what will happen, because Pales and Rails is a discussion of musculature, but it's really a discussion of your central nervous system. By generating more force, your CNS has this understanding of like, oh, we actually have more range than I thought, and we've got more range that feels safe. So what you might be able to do is once you've done a few rounds of it, you might be able to be like, oh, you know what? I can get a little deeper into that stretch than I thought. You may not, and that's okay too. Yep. So then you're like, oh, I've got some more. So now, Jan, you'd stack that block a little bit higher. You can actually you could probably get away with doing the same thing if you wanted to. Yep. And then you'll try and generate force through this game. Okay. Yep, and so same thing, the deeper you get into end range, the less oomph you're going to be able to generate, and that's okay. Good.
It's so funny because there's so much happening internally.
Oh yeah, and you're just stationary. Yeah, the isometric aspect of this is just hilarious. It's super safe because there is no movement, but it's hilarious because there's so much effort and it looks like nothing's occurring. Yeah.
Nothing, but everything's happening.
Yep. And so then, once you feel like you've gotten a pretty good groove of this, you can remove the block and then retest your rotational capacity, and let's see if it's a little better or the same or different or worse or whatever.
Is it normal to feel it quite a bit in your performance? Like my performance feels exhausted.
Yep.
Where's your performance? What's that?
It's going to be pretty, how would you can describe it for yourself.
Like where the butt connects with the like that bone
Oh,
back here.
underneath.
Oh,
yeah. Got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
So again, the game's always going to be one of options and choices. This is probably the first time that you've done something like that, so I want you to take the data, the snapshot in, but as you test this and as you get stronger at it and you have all those things, you can start shifting like, okay, if that guy's doing the work, what about over here? What about through here? Can I feel it in the deepest part of my hip socket that I possibly can? Okay, what do we think? Similar, different? Definitely a little bit more height. Terrific. A little happier than that first test. Okay, cool. Yeah, definitely. All right, good. Go ahead and come out of that for a second. Shake that out. Shake out both legs. And so actually, in the way that you're feeling that hamstring, I'd say probably similar game. It's really helpful for you to understand that like when I'm thinking about creating rotational drive in my hip, my hamstring, he's one of the champions. They really want to help out. As you get better at this game, let's see if we can be like, what if I turn my hamstring off? Now who's doing it? Can I feel it in the deepest layer of that hip socket? Now who's doing it? That type of game as you're moving through. Okay, but that first bit to just be like, I didn't realize. I didn't know my hamstring was a part of this game. Totally okay. Cool.
Until I relaxed, I was like, oh,
Exactly.
there we go.
Exactly. And how would you have ever have known that? Yeah, totally. Okay, good. Let's go ahead and do the other side. And then we'll wrap up with one little thing, and then that'll be the ball game. Okay, so go ahead and test just your rotations. Can we float the front ankle? Can we float the back ankle? And you might have to, you might be like, nope, not forearm. Nope, I gotta lie down like a baby. That's okay. Yep, that's okay. No big deal. And it's less of like lying down like a baby. It's more we're just changing the angle of the pelvis that makes the rotation a little more accessible.
And you're stacking like that top hip over.
Yep, and actually the closer you bring that top hip to the front knee, the happier the body will be. It'll be like, oh,
Got it, yeah.
thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But again, if we kind of keep one of the recurring themes here, I would want you to be able to do it kind of regardless of the position. Like the option is to get good at everything. And then we can test the back leg a little bit. And then my guess, yeah, y'all have some pretty darn good internal rotation, which is fantastic. And then we can do the external rotation, Pales Rails. But just to see if we're on the same page, if I asked you to do the internal rotation pales rails, how would we do that?
This one?
Yep.
You push your knee down.
So the knee would stay down, but we would essentially put the block underneath that back ankle, put ourselves into the deepest stretch that you can find on the internal piece, and then pales rails by trying to squish down with the ankle and lift off with the ankle. So you can, of course, go ahead and test that, play that out. Yep, and if you're not feeling a stretch, bringing the top hip away from the mirror, that'll increase it. And if you're like, I still don't feel it, go ahead and come up to your hand. Good. Yep, and then literally think, I'm going to bring my left butt back down towards the mat.
And where should I be feeling?
I want you to feel this bone rotating in the deepest section of the pelvis. Got it? Yep, and then pales would be crush block. Rails would be try and lift off block. Yep, exactly. So you'll just take your time.
I'm feeling that all my when I try to
So
lift it.
I would say the same game about hamstring and about piriformis over here. It's okay for you. It's really, in fact, not even okay. I think it's vitally important for when we first test something out. How does your body handle something when the system is overloaded? Who's doing the work for you?
Yeah.
And then ideally, eventually, you could calm it down like how you calm down your neck. And then you're like, if I was just going to try and have a conversation, because like the femur is this one big bone, and all we're doing is kind of going, can I feel communication at that deepest layer rather than the kind of superficial tissue that you could touch?
About the bone rather than the surrounding muscle.
It's about the actual joint, yes, exactly, rather than just the one superhero tissue, right?
Yes.
Cool. So take your time. If you were like, wow, the internal rotation is really interesting, do that game. Make sure we do enough external rotation so we feel balanced. If you're like, I need to do internal rotation on the other side, you absolutely can. But make sure that all feels pretty balanced and happy. Yes, ma'am.
Is this the correct, like, it should be right here?
Yeah,
or
that
should
looks,
it be, like, further
I like exactly where you were at. There's not a rightness or a wrongness. You actually bring up a really tremendous point. So Jalen's question essentially was like, where does this leg that's not doing anything, where does it live, right? I like, just for my own assessment, keeping the knee in line with the hip, relatively in line with the shoulder, only because if I'm trying to be a decent scientist, if I come back and I test it the same week in and week out, I know that I haven't changed anything about my alignment, so if something's different each time, it's because I've created a change in a different way. However, I would love for you to just be able to crush it at any point. So if you're like, let me try this. Oh, hell yeah, I can go back there. Oh, hell yeah. Awesome, all of it's good, okay? Nice. Yep. And so if you're getting lift off, you have enough space to go deeper into the range. So that might be taller block, or yes, exactly. Or even just coming up to your hand, like whatever, but either one. Yep. Nice. Any questions or funkiness on this side? Similar data or different data than the left side?
It's different.
Yeah.
It, like the muscle that's firing more. I think also because I did like leg day yesterday.
Oh yeah, fair enough. So, like, it's like your whole inner hip hamstring game. Yep. Yeah.
But it also feels familiar. Like I
Yeah.
know how to do it.
Cool.
I do ballet when they do it for an attitude, and they make you like lift.
Through there.
The muscles that I'm using right
Understood.
now.
Yeah. And so I think as a tool overall, Pales Rails is helpful for both the joint and the tissue. The same overall theme that we've been talking about is, are you intentionally trying to do that? Right? If you're like, I want to try and have a conversation with the deepest part of my hip, and you're like, shit, I can't find it, then I'd be like, let's try and see if we can get to the deepest part of your hip and quiet everybody else down. Tell Brandon to shut up, you know what I mean? Like, get everybody to be quiet and just get right in there. Or if you're like, damn, my adductors are incredibly sore from whatever, you'd put that into like a stretchy position, and then you would pales and rails that tissue to try and alleviate some of that soreness. Okay? Okay, so here's the last bit to try and bring all of these pieces back. Haley, I'm going to use you as my demo. Will you lie down like a little baby on one side? Doesn't matter. Yeah. So for the rest of you, this is the full-on hip car. Okay. So after any type of game of really deep work inside of a joint or just deep work in general, it's like how when I had us do the really intense thoracic conversations, I had us go back to doing the full spine conversation. It's a little bit like you and I did a deep dive on our childhoods or whatever it is. And then it was like, hey man, I'm really glad that you're my friend. And it was just like a reconnecting about why we even did that in the first place. It's the same type of thing. It's like, why did I have all of this extension game? So that I can have the spine be a more cooperative experience, okay? So we just did all of this rotational stuff inside the hip, and now we want to be hip, I need you to be full on hip stuff. Okay, so here's the game. So I'm gonna block your top hip so that you have full permission to like push into me. But it's been a while since I've gotten to see you do this. So let's just see what you do solo dolo without any of my coaching.
Wait, is this one?
Yes, ma'am. Cool, and then bring it up towards my face and then up towards your face. Fantastic, breathe. Yeah, ooh, that was a good one. Yep, that was really good. And now go the opposite way. Okay, so for everybody that is watching, the game that she is playing is she's taking it through the full range of the hip. And so the hip has the ability to obviously move the knee through space, but she's also doing a tremendous job of refining that internal and external rotation that we just trained. So on the back half of the hip car, I'm gonna hijack your leg for a second, as much internal as we possibly can. She's in control of the internal as we open the hip. She's stuck right about here, and that's when we're going to externally rotate out of the stuck. She's trying to hit me, so that's abduction. She's bringing it out, and now she's trying to externally rotate as much as she possibly can, and then she'll reset that full game, okay? So that way we're taking the hip through its full range of motion, and we're telling the hip, hey, you have massive strength and force generation that you can create through the full range. Cool? Cool? All right, so let's try that, and if you got questions, and this will be the last thing, and then we'll be done, okay? So lie on one side, take your time.
Hip lubrication.
Hip lubrication, yes, exactly. Yeah. Haley's got a little extra experience on it, so if you start it and you're like, oh my God, mine doesn't look like that at all, that's totally okay, okay? So I would say start first by tucking the bottom knee into your chest. And then you can hold on to it with your hands if you want, because that's going to keep your lumbar out of this. The more rounded the lumbar is, the more you're like, oh, I'm only having a conversation with my hip, okay? So take your time. So you'll switch legs. So it'll be that neat. Yes, exactly. Yep. So start first. Nice. So start first by just thinking, how much distance can I get my knee to move around the room? Okay, start first with that. And if you're like, I don't know when I'm supposed to internally and externally rotate, I'll tell you. Okay, so first just think, where's my knee? Okay, fantastic. And then the dancers in all of you, that top hip wants to fall back. So keep that top hip directly on top of the bottom hip, and that'll feel like a much different experience. Yep. So I'm going to do the same thing I did for you that I did for Haley. So you've got so much range through here. Bring it down. This is perfect. But I'm going to keep you blocked. But now you can like really push into me. You're not going to knock me over. So now I'll go through that full circle, and you feel free to push that top hip into me. But do you feel how that is starting to become a little bit different? Yup. There's more oomph that you can generate, right? Fantastic. And now you have the ability to create more external through here. Fantastic. Good. And now we'll go the opposite way. So now external, try and hit yourself in the face. Try and hit me in the face. And now internal, try and get that ankle to me. Get the knee away from me. Get that knee to the ground. Does that make sense? Good. And you're doing a wonderful job keeping it out of your low back. Cool. Questions? Yeah, what's up?
I know I'm probably going to need help on my left side.
Yeah, I got you. So I think just to give you like the little foreshadow, I'll give your body the understanding of what I'm asking you to do first. So be heavy. I got you. Like I've got you, literally. Yep, so we're internal. We go back. You're stuck here. You'll start to externally rotate through this. You're going to try and bring the ankle essentially all the way to your face. And then right about here, you're like, okay, that's enough. And then you'll reverse it. You'll try and hit me. Kind of stuck right about here. You'll internally rotate. Back through here. And then all the way to the ground. Cool. And now you try and duplicate that. And then I'm going to block your hips so that you can have that same kind of like force generation.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. And then bring the knee to my face. Fantastic. Yep. And now bring the knee and the ankle to your face. Yep. And now sweep it back the opposite way. So bring the knee to my face. And then bring the ankle to my face as you bring the knee back behind you. Yep, so we're internally rotating. Yep, exactly. Yep. Good. Cool. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. No, it's okay. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know when I'm supposed to internally and externally rotate. The game will just be, get good at everything. right? So if you ever are confused, you're like, well, I did it this way one time.
Yeah.
I'll do it the other way the other time. Not a big deal.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the hip car in general is deep joint conversation, but it's also massive support from the tissue that's obviously in control of moving that whole thing through space. Okay? So it's both like musculature work, joint work, and your central nervous system understanding like, oh, I didn't realize I needed to be able to hold this position, right? So much of what I see in like yoga and dance is I need a position. I'm gonna force myself in that position because I need more flexibility, as opposed to being like, oh shit, I gotta put myself there? Crazy, right? And so if we can do, like, the passive range is not bad, it's just, do we have the active range to back it up, is all. Cool?
Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. That's class. You guys are amazing. You guys are amazing. Yeah, it seems crazy hard, but I promise you again, like, end range will always be hard because it's your end range. But in terms of these just being new tools, because you guys are good movers, after you do a couple of these things, and Brandon and I are shooting a bunch of videos, they'll be free, they'll be up online. If you're like, I forget what the hell we talked about, they'll be up there, and you can learn from those things and integrate them however you want, and then questions, send them my way.
I
Cool?
will say that, like, with practicing Mark's stuff, it has made me a better dancer because of the body communication. Like it is insane. When you dance after even doing like all the cars and like getting your body communication right, like everything changes and you just become like invincible.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Haley.
it's like the first practice of like injury prevention. Like as dancers, we're just not taught how to preserve and how to prevent. It's always get injured and then heal instead of actually getting your body. Like we don't treat ourselves like athletes or like Olympians. It's like we're just not given the tools.
Crazy, yeah.
It like what you do is
so important.
Thanks, Hens. I appreciate you.
It's hard, and I feel like it's actually great to come at it a little bit later in your life almost because you know like we know our bodies, we know our bodies, especially as movers. Like we really know these guys, but it's crazy because it exposes actually how much you don't. And you're like, whoa, like this is like there's a whole other way to connect with the body that we just were never really exposed to. So this stuff, like just like you said, it like unlocks your brain, and your brain now gets to be an active participant in the process rather than just kind of letting your body distract itself from like what is it memory?
Yeah.
It's like, no,
For sure. How many times have I done this before? Yeah.
Dance, it's just like I'm in default and I just do it, but like now you get to be so intentional and like be protected too.
Yes, and also trust it.
Yeah.
For sure.
But also a big part, I think a big reason why I kept being like, don't worry, your body will figure it out. So I've been working with these high schoolers a lot in these conventions, and mostly I'm there because nobody wants to talk to me until they're like, fuck, it hurts so bad, I gotta come talk to this guy and get it resolved.
I have to get injured first.
But the nice thing, in general, the athletes that I work with, like when I work with like a pitcher, it's very clear to me, like if this is the full human and this is like a perfect circle would be everything's chill, everything's good. For that, it's like, it's very obvious where the issue is. He's a pitcher, he's throwing this thing 1,000 times over a period of a week. With dancers, it's like there's this great big circle and there's these really small little slivers of unknownness because you guys have to have so much control in so many areas. And so I say that a lot because when I work with these dancers sometimes in high school, they start to be like, well, why can't I be able to do these things? But the pickup is, it's like the mind is opened, and it doesn't take that much for it to start filling up that room again. Like your body will start to be like, oh, okay. It's not that scary. There's like more information in a good way as opposed to just an overwhelming type of game.
Yeah. And it's also interrupting the patterns that we've learned to be like, oh, I'm just gonna normalize this injury. Like my back, like for me, I'm like, oh, it's always my right sciatic. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's always like I just have a hip problem. You know, this is a hip problem that you like continue to work through. And then it's like my identity.
Yeah.
That's just who I am.
And you're just like, why is your hip hurt?
Why are you doing that?
Like something happened 6 years ago.
That's who I am now. Don't take it away from me. Yeah.
It's kind of like body therapy almost. It's like it kind of reminds me of what is that new thing that it's like EMDR? What's that?
Oh,
yeah. It's like the experience of having to like confront the thing like immediately, and you have to react to it.
Right.
I kind of feel like that's what it is. You're like,
that's so true.
Fully, it's like exposure therapy.
Yeah, but I also do very much understand the having the injuries and playing those games. Like a lot of the time when I first work with a particular client, there's even like a hesitancy to communicate the story because a lot of the time they've had to do it so many times to different doctors or chiropractors and all those types of things. So as we like build our relationships and do all that stuff, just know that like I totally fucking get it, right? And we'll just keep working until we find a tool, and that's it. Just little bits over time. So you guys are more than welcome to stay and ask me questions and do whatever, or like I can give you my number or the Instagrams or whatever. Literally anytime you're like, this feels weird, what do I do? And I'll be like, do this thing or try it out. Let me know. Yeah, for real.
It was very generous.
Cool. Yeah, it's a blast. It's super fun. So we're playing this game. I know you said March is booked. We're trying to keep this intentionally small, but like the live stream, you can access it from wherever. It's just not dedicated. It's not like you're not directly in front of me. But this is the fun like community game that we're building and playing. So.
But this is live streamed now on Sunday?
Yeah.
Yep.
Live streams it from YouTube.
Yep. And then we're taking some of the footage and the other stuff that we're filming, and then I'm gonna chop it into stuff that's a little nicer in terms of like the live stream is good, but yeah, exactly. It'll be more specific on correct. Yeah. So that'll all pretty much live on YouTube. Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here.
It's so hard to leave the house. Like I get it. So
Especially on a rainy day. Yeah. And thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you, baby.
Appreciate it.
Okay, we'll get this shit done. Cutting.